right. Welcome, everyone. I see that people are joining in today's session right now. I will give it a few minutes to let people join before we get started here. So thank you for joining, and it will be just a few minutes. All right, one more minute, and then we will go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining, and we'll wait for a few others. All right, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining today's webinar. It's a pleasure to be with each of you today, and we're looking forward to the first session that we have this week for our engagement days. During today's webinar, here's a quick run of our agenda that we'll be presenting out. We'll do quick introductions. We'll talk about the Apparel Impact Institute, share some context on engagement days, share details about our programs and methodologies, including our 2024 calendar, highlight some of our upcoming engagement days for yet here in 2024. And last but not least, we'll get into a question and answer session for our time today. If you do have questions, I believe the chat feature is active. So if you have a question or a thought that arises, please add it to the chat feature, and we will ensure that we get to those questions at the end of the session. So again, please use the chat feature. Looking forward to this. So with that, I will hand it over to Tamara quickly, who's on the presentation with me today to introduce herself.
Hello, nice to meet you all. Nice to see some familiar people here in the participant list. So my name is Tamara Wolf. I'm the Vice President of Programs at the Apparel Impact Institute. Now 2 years with the Institute. Overall, I'm having 20 years of experience in sustainability and the broader fashion industry. I've worked with brands, service providers, and strategy consultancy. And now I'm leading AI's team that's responsible for the program deployment and the team responsible for the climate solutions portfolio. So let me hand over to Brian, our Senior Director of Industry Engagement.
Thanks, Tamara. I appreciate that. And as Tamara mentioned, my name is Brian Lepre. I'm the Senior Director of Industry Engagement here at the Apparel Impact Institute. And I lead the team responsible for all of our brand, manufacturing, and stakeholder partnerships globally. I've been with the organization since September of 2019. Prior to that, have experience across risk management and due diligence supporting banks and developers, in addition to corporate sustainability in the retail space, with some small manufacturing experience as well. And so we're both excited to be on today's webinar, and we will move forward with our content. So over the next about 10 or so minutes, I will go ahead and provide context to who the Apparel Impact Institute is. So starting at a high level, the Apparel Impact Institute is focused on deploying solutions to decarbonize the apparel industry. We're a registered not-for-profit in the United States that operates globally to identify, fund, scale, and measure decarbonization and environmental solutions. And what you'll see on the screen here on the right side is a visual that's meant to represent the Apparel Impact Institute as a convener and a collaborator in the center of the circle with two key aspects to the organization. The first is our climate solutions portfolio, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, and our fashion climate fund. And the important aspects of how we are able to facilitate and make this work for the industry is key partnerships, whether it's our brands and retailers, qualified implementation program partners, really those technical experts who support the work, philanthropic partners and donors who are able to help fund the work that we do. And then most importantly and key to a lot of this work is those manufacturers and suppliers who are an important and necessary stakeholder in a lot of this work. And on the bottom of the visual, what you see is what I would call secondary and as important, but those that we might not necessarily directly engage with here at the Apparel Impact Institute. First, policymakers, consumers, and last but not least, communities where all of us live and work. So the biggest opportunity we really try to play here again is that convener where we're able to align and influence the biggest opportunities that we can act to produce decarbonization efforts for the industry. A little bit more context now on what I mentioned earlier when it comes to identify, fund, and scale solutions for the industry. When it becomes identifying, this is looking for solutions that exist within the industry via our climate solutions portfolio. So knowing there's several programs, there's several solutions, there's several technologies that are out there in the industry, some at early stage, others at a more mature level. We're out there trying to identify these proven solutions to help support manufacturers in their journey towards decarbonization. When it comes to funding, this is where we're looking at pulling together industry dollars, whether it's brands and suppliers, in addition to philanthropic organizations who are able to help us support and fund work in the pre-seed innovation, pilot, or scale phase of the solutions that might be identified within our climate solutions portfolio. And what's important here, when we're talking about funding, this is recognition of our Fashion Climate Fund, which is a $250 million fund that we've launched last year. And I'll talk a little bit more about that momentarily. And then finally, there's a key principle to this idea of scale. We know that we'll have to accelerate implementation of programs that meet certain criteria that are rooted in quality, they're science-based, we're able to measure and gather quality data for these programs to demonstrate progress for the industry, because we know that the likes of 2030, 2035, 2040, years that certain milestones and science-based targets that have been set by our industry partners, whether they're brands or specific manufacturers, are key to those, are tied to those key milestones for the industry. And that's where the idea of scale and progress is necessary. And those are the premise and the foundational aspects to the work that we do. Part of the discussion thus far, I've really highlighted the topic of climate change, but it's important to note that we've put the immediate priority of carbon or climate change and decarbonization as core to the work. However, when you look at how we take our work forward and focus on facility level improvements, there's other areas that come into play. It's not solely just climate change. It's tied to water, resource scarcity, consumption, and biodiversity loss. So those are all secondary issues that come through our work, but we lead with climate change and carbon, knowing the urgency and the necessary actions that are needed. And as I mentioned before, our Fashion Climate Fund, it's a $250 million fund to accelerate decarbonization and action within the industry. And if you look at the left side of the screen here, you'll see what is a $250 million fund managed by AII, a combination of $150 million of funding coming from brands and retailers, and then $100 million coming from philanthropy to equal the aggregate 250. This money in $250 million, the intention is to deploy it into the center here. And you'll see this is indicated to go towards grants to, again, help those solutions that might have been identified within our Fashion Climate Fund. And alternatively, program budgets in ways that our brands are able to then help nominate or enroll some of their direct manufacturers or suppliers in programs that the Apparel Impact Institute offers, such as our Carbon Leadership Program, Clean by Design is a few examples. And as we go into the center of this circle, what's important to note is that this theory is grounded in a $2 billion capital unlock over 8 years. The idea with all of this is rooted in what was originally done, our roadmap to net zero with the World Resources Institute, that identified the emissions by tiers of the supply chain, coupled with what we predicted to be the necessary reductions. After that report was done, we issued another report that basically looked at the interventions necessary that were identified in the report, ranging from energy efficiency, renewable energy, thermal solutions, and several aspects in the material space, whether it's material efficiency or next gen materials. Each of those levers were identified in the necessary capital requirements or the amounts necessary to fund improvements to achieve a certain threshold of reductions for the industry. What we did is to focus that work in on a very specific $2 billion capital unlock over that 8-year period. And so that's what the center of this visual is meant to represent. And as we then shift to the right side of this document, it's important to note then to get to the $2 billion, there's an additional 1.75 billion identified for funding from outside of the Apparel Impact Institute or driven by existing markets and existing potential investors, whether it's banks, private equity, excuse me, and impact investment funds. As a part of this, the way the math works is we identified $150 million from suppliers potentially making those investments coming from their budgets. But the recognition again that there's industry mechanisms, there's programs out there around debt and equity to consider is an unlock for this additional 1.75 billion to achieve the $2 billion capital unlock over 8 years. And what's important to note about this work is specifically around the idea of blended capital. The Apparel Impact Institute is working through several work streams over the last 6 months to identify pilot opportunities and ways to identify solutions where we can de-risk or identify necessary funding mechanisms to help support manufacturers and suppliers in the industry with brand support. And so we're have this work ongoing and look for additional updates from us later this year, specifically probably within Q2 engagement days, and some additional things that we're able to release here in the coming months. So with that, I'm going to shift now from a little bit of the Apparel Impact Institute at a very high level and get into what are the engagement days. And so today, this session is the first of multiple over the next couple days. The reason that we are launching the engagement days here in 2024 is to expand our approach to engage our global stakeholders based on feedback that we've received from several our brand partners, our supplier partners, and stakeholders. We've heard we'd like an opportunity to better engage or hear from the Apparel Impact Institute on a reoccurring basis. We didn't necessarily need one-on-one. How can you host webinars, events, gatherings to share more to several stakeholders, but be relevant on global time zones, knowing the nuance of our global work, be relevant with the topics to necessary stakeholders depending on their needs. And so to help address that, we wanted to launch the engagement days that will occur on a quarterly basis here within 2024. To support that, we've launched a theme called Evolving for Impact Towards 2030. So this is a recognition on the change and the transformation that's necessary to ensure that we are achieving decarbonization, reductions in climate change, and the necessary impacts by 2030. So here in Q1, the premise that we wanted to leverage and sort of the theme for each of the webinars over the next couple days is rooted in setting the stage. So today's first session is about sharing who the Apparel Impact Institute is and how we approach our work. We have a couple sessions coming up later today and next week around our climate solution, or I'm sorry, tomorrow around our climate solutions portfolio. And then later on Thursday and Friday, we have regional sessions that will be led by each of our regional leads to really share more about the Institute and work happening in the regions that we operate globally. So this is the first start to what is going to be several rounds throughout 2024. The need for this evolution is also important. So there's a lot of information on this slide that I'm not going to cover in detail, but what I think is important is it's the acknowledgement as well that for the Apparel Impact Institute to evolve towards 2030, there's several things we need to focus in on and consider as we look out towards 2030. Industry engagement, which is a role specifically for my team, and in making sure that we have effectively engaged our brands and supply and partners both to understand their needs, develop and support the necessary solutions, and listen and be an agent for facilitation. That's then management. We have to be able to be aware, tied to, and ensure that we can help support partners outside of maybe specific solutions and necessary funding needed. Project execution lives within tomorrow's world, has several important aspects as well. How many suppliers can we manage and support within a year? How do we look beyond maybe a 1 year period for 3 to 5 years within those key regions that we know have significant opportunities for improvement? And then the area that I briefly mentioned, this idea of sustainable finance. We know that's a necessary and critical component to achieve this impact. And it's a space that the Apparel Impact Institute is supporting with necessary information that will be coming out both in the form of pilots and tests and some additional thought pieces around white papers or knowledge for the industry. And last but not least, this evolution that we're going through on engagement and execution also is deeply tied to marketing, reporting, and blended capital. And really, for this section of our evolution in the work, it's ensuring that we're making information, data, transparency for the industry on our work and the progress that's being made. And again, this idea of finances being a necessary and critical component to the work that we can't do if we don't evolve and make sure that we're supporting suppliers in this journey with the necessary resources and using them as a necessary partner to ensure that we're hearing their feedback, their concerns, and what ideas they have to make the necessary progress for the industry. So this is setting the context for today, the next couple days, in several rounds of engagement to come yet within 2024. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Tamara, and she will start to get into and provide context on our methodology and programs. Tamara.
Thank you so much, Brian, and thank you for the great introduction about AI and also the engagement days. I must say the engagement days are a new way of engagement that really excites me, because I think that's a great opportunity to not only learn the basics about AI as today, but then really also dive into topics of interest a little bit deeper. So join the sessions that you would like. Coming now to our way of working and our methodology. AI historically has always followed a science-based and focused approach. And initially, we were doing some research and have been able to allocate how much emissions can we link to which tier level. And as you can see here, we have tier 1 with the finished product assembly, 9% of emissions, material production, 52%, raw material processing in tier 3, 15%, and then raw material extraction, 24%. Eventually, with data over time getting better, the percentages might slightly change, but the key message here is really that in a tier 2, we have the biggest emissions. And being a focused organization, that is also where we see the greatest opportunity to drive emission reductions. That does not mean that we are not looking at tier 1, and it does also not mean that we are not looking at tier 3, but that tier 2 just holds the greatest opportunity. And the areas we are working on are maximization of material efficiency, scaling preferred materials and practices, acceleration of next-gen materials is a topic that we have not deeply dived into yet, maximization of energy efficiency, elimination of coal, and a shift to 100% renewable electricity. And overall, and I think that's not new to anyone on this call, is circular business model are an amazing opportunity for the industry to drive emission reductions. Next slide, please. So coming from this higher level now to how do we work? How do we work with you as the brand? How do we work with you as the suppliers or with you as the manufacturers? We have developed a program, and that's the Carbon Leadership Program. That is our collective action program for factory decarbonization. We have over the time developed a lot of tools and programs, and with the Carbon Leadership Program, we are putting that all together under one umbrella in order to help structure the way how decarbonization can happen. And the first step, and that's very relevant for brands, is a benchmarking. And we're using a tool called the Carbon Tech Assessment. And that benchmarks facilities against each other and their carbon saving potential, and also against the database of similar facilities. And with that, we help brands to prioritize where to focus their efforts and their dollars. The next step, and that's where really the factory journey starts, is the carbon target setting. We do not only set a target here, we actually make a thorough assessment on the reduction opportunities. We develop a low carbon action plan, and from that we derive the target, the feasible carbon target. We can also match that against a set target and show you the gap between, let's say you want to save 45%, and with the actions in the action plan you save 38, and then there will be a gap of 7% where you will have to think how to achieve that. The tools for that are the CTS and the SCAP program mainly, and they really form a very nice basis. However, not everybody, depending on maturity level, on the approach by the brand, the approach of the supplier, always takes that step. This doesn't mean that I don't recommend it. It means not everybody does take it. I think it's a very good starting point into a decarbonization journey. Then you have this action plan, and with this you will see like certain areas that come up: energy efficiency, renewables, coal, and AI has a big bucket around implementation, and that's also our heritage. We call it the climate solutions. On the one hand, you're seeing our programs, the AI programs that we have been running for years, and I will look into them on the next page as well. And then there is the climate solutions portfolio. And these programs are all aimed at reducing CO2 emissions. Some of those programs, like our Clean by Design program, really focus on low-hanging fruits and energy efficiency. And other, like the Renewable Procurement Project in Taiwan, is a longer-term program. The Climate Solutions portfolio is looking for solutions for factories to implement. We have started in our first funding series with programs that help save emissions, where we know that this will be successful. And now we are looking for technologies, innovations, disruptive ideas, as much as solutions that are well established on the market, to become part of the climate solution portfolio, that basically a factory can go there and really search for, I need to do A, B, or C. What are possible solutions? What are possible solutions in my region? And really, how can I become part of that? And that will then happen through the climate solutions portfolio. And we want to help factories with this to really find ways to decarbonize. The step 4, I feel it's a very important one because it puts factories on a continuous improvement process. It's something we call carbon target monitoring. Basically, what we do is, when you have an action plan, typically already set in step 2, you will, I see that Archak raises his hand. I think it would be good to post your question in the chat, Archak, and we take it up later. So if you do the carbon target setting, you have an action plan, then the carbon target monitoring is really helpful to follow up on the progress. The additional point is to use that also to really evolve the action plan. Imagine there's an action plan. After 1 year, something will have happened in the facility. They may have taken decisions to go in the one direction or in the other, or they have taken a feasibility study on a certain topic. So that's where the carbon target monitoring comes into the game and really helps to continuously drive facilities and help them to continue their decarbonization journey. Last but not least, that's the step 5, which is still in the concept phase. That's the third-party data validation for carbon accounting. So we will be updating you once we know more on how the industry will approach that and how AI can support you on this topic. Next slide, please.
In one housekeeping thing, I apologize. We were directing everyone to the chat, which appears to have been disabled when this was set up. I sincerely apologize. Please direct questions to the Q&A, the question and answer session or section of the Zoom link within the platform here, and let's see if the questions will appear there. I sincerely apologize for that.
Thank you, Brian, for raising that. That's very helpful. And then I spoke about the step 3 implementation. And here you see all the programs that AI is running. Actually, not only those for implementation, but also those in step 1, 2, 3, and 4. You will also see the type of solution. So is it an AI in-house program, or is it a climate solutions portfolio solution? To which tier level does this solution apply? And then which impact areas does it have? And you will see GHG reduction, energy efficiency, water reduction, cleaner chemicals, wastewater, renewables, coal phase out, and materials efficiency. You also will see color coding. And orange means this program is available at scale. What does scale mean? We have tested it, we know it works, and we can offer it in quite a big range of regions. Model. I would say a little less sophisticated, like the scale, but already proven. So these typically happen in a range of regions, or were just brought to scale in one specific region. So that's what you see here in the gray area. And then in the dark gray area, sorry. And then there's the light gray area, and that's our pilots. So these solutions are really at an early stage. Typically, we speak to brands to identify the participants to whom they really believe that project fits. And we are learning a lot at this early stage with these pilot programs. And I will not go through every program because that will take too much time. And in our regional sessions that the teams will host, you will learn more. But feel free to reach out to us to get more information about each of the programs. Or also our impact report from last year describes all our programs in very great detail. Overall, again, coming back to what Brian was saying, a core focus is on GHG reduction for all of these programs. Next slide. And just to give you an idea, at the early 2024, these were the programs that were actively running. Carbon target assessment and carbon target setting were available in various regions and ready to deploy, and are ready to deploy in many countries. So we have not added this because we wanted to help you not get confused with this slide. But we are running our Clean by Design energy and water efficiency program since end of 2023 in El Salvador, Honduras, Mexico, and the US. So we've tapped into this region, and if that's of interest for you, come to us, talk to us. We can also consider additional countries like, let's say, Brazil or Peru. We have also worked a lot in Italy. Italy is a little bit different from the market. So our carbon target setting in this market is also adapted to fit the local approach. And then our Clean by Design energy and water efficiency program is run there now for a couple of years. Next year, we will pilot a leather program in Italy. China and Taiwan, that's a region where we historically have been running a lot of programs. So you don't only see our flagship Clean by Design programs here, but also the Renewable Energy Transition Initiative and the Renewable Procurement Program with REN, which are both in pilot phase. Pakistan and Cambodia, we are currently running the chemistry program. We can run the energy program in Pakistan. Vietnam has been one of our most active regions last year. We had a lot of facilities completing the energy and water efficiency program. We have also a few facilities in the chemistry program. India, the same. Bangladesh has been added as a new region, and we see a lot of interest. Indonesia is also a country that we have been working in, and we are always looking for quality experts. So we are seeing a little bit of a change. So while that's still active, the next cohort will probably take a little bit until we can kick it off again. Next slide. And speaking of kicking off, some of you may know we are growing. With the growth, we are becoming more organized and more, we are more planning ahead. So we've now for program development developed a four key dates a year.
Sorry, you were just cutting out there. Sorry to interrupt
Yeah,
you.
I have very, very bad winds here and a very bad storm. Do you want to take over, Bryant?
You're back now. I'll keep an eye on if it happens again. I'll jump in.
Okay, good. As I'm back now, and sorry for the German weather. We will have 4 kickoffs per year for all programs. Our programs will typically be split by location and by the type of program. And then there will be a separate kickoff. We do club together several facilities from different brands and retailers. We might also see some interest of facilities that want to work directly with us. So that would happen at the same time. Q1 here is an example. And it's very important for us that also everybody is very clear how this process runs in order for the factories to be ready for the kickoff. So now during the engagement days, you will learn more about the cohorts and the details. And we will also share a follow-up email to our brand partners. And what then happens is we do request the brands to send an initial factory list to us, and we can review it and look if there is potential for co-nomination and start an initial planning. Co-nomination, just for those that are new, means two different or more brands want to work with the same facility on the same program. Afterwards, it's important that brands support the recruitment of the factories into the program. So there is a communication between the brand and the factory, and I will support it with webinars for the facilities, giving them more information about the benefits of a program. One part is that we require a signed commitment letter from the facility, and the brands are responsible to collect that from the factories. These need to be sent to us until the 13th of March for the next kickoff. Afterwards, we will inform you about the program logistics, and the experts will send out the kickoff invitation to the facilities. They will also see you as the brand and AI. And then the kickoff starts. So that will be the same procedure every quarter. Normally, the kickoff is happening in the last week of a quarter, but as we have Chinese New Year, this quarter is a little bit delayed. So just imagine the same process, but the kickoff happening in the last months of the quarter. So that's how AI will be working on this. We do have a detailed calendar for the full year. I'm happy to share it in a follow-up. Or you can reach out. We are happy to share more information to you. But just that you have it in mind, make sure that if you want to have facilities in our programs, that there is a process to actually join any of our programs. And that's it with key dates from me. I will hand over to Bryant, and then I hope that internet on his side is not as challenging as on my end. And thank you for listening to me.
Thanks, Tamara. No winds here, so hopefully it works in Minnesota. And I'm looking out the window and there's no snow either. So we are very unseasonably warm. So all things considered, I hope our weather will hold up. And really quick, what I would just like to reiterate a point that Tamara mentioned about this slide here is the importance of this idea of co-nomination and working together. Again, when I introduced the Apparel Impact Institute as a convener and a collaborator, one thing that's really important to us is making sure that we're allowing brands to work together directly with their facility partners in this co-nomination scenario. And within our database, when we collect these lists, we're able to make matches and identify opportunities for working together because we know that's ever important. It's a way that we can potentially reduce costs, reduce duplication, simplify the level of engagement with your facility and supplier partners. So ever critical to what this means for the co-nomination or sort of the enrollment process for the Apparel Impact Institute. And then with that, I will now quickly highlight some of the upcoming moments for our engagement days, both this quarter and the rest of the year. So again, the idea here is over several days, once a quarter, allow to specifically engage with the Apparel Impact Institute on topics that we've heard requested from several of our stakeholders, brands, suppliers, and other NGOs and stakeholders in this space. So this week, again, we're focused on setting the stage, providing a lot of context on who the Apparel Impact Institute is, how we identify and look for the solutions that exist in the industry. So session one is right now. Session two will be later today, and that will focus on both our climate solutions portfolio, looking at some of the things that we're interested in addition to highlighting a couple components from our upcoming roadmaps that were recently announced and that we're taking forward for the industry. Tomorrow, the US time, afternoon, evening Europe, we will have a climate solutions portfolio demo day. This is an exciting moment to hear specifically from two of our first round grantees in their platforms and the solutions that they're developing for the industry to bring forward. Session four, that will be various times, Thursday, Friday, globally, will be regional engagement to connect with our regional leads, hear from them on specific activities happening within their markets. And then last but not least, session five, again, back to the climate solutions portfolio. And this is a really important one that we heard from a variety of stakeholders is the opportunity to engage and understand within the climate solutions portfolio, the opportunity for applications. What is the application process? How best to engage? Who are we looking for from a funding perspective? And how does that funding work? How is it deployed? So several important and necessary details. Those sessions are Thursday, January 30th, or February 8th. So again, globally relevant time zones. And if anybody did not receive the invitations or the email announcement that we sent out, please please reach out to Tamara or myself directly, Tamara at apparelimpact.org, Bryant at apparelimpact.org, and we are happy to ensure that you have the appropriate registration links for this. Then looking out to later this year, again, if we're looking at how we can support the evolution for impact towards 2030, in quarter two, several topics or webinar sessions will be offered around the idea of collaboration, whether it's through the climate solutions portfolio, blended capital, direct programmatic work. Several sessions upcoming that we'll announce at a later date. Then, as we look to quarter three, we'll be talking about innovation, implementation, and tracking. So if we think back to the outline that Tamara shared with us in some of the context, ever important, but it takes several activities, new solutions. From here, we will then look at implementation and tracking again, that carbon target monitoring reporting for the industry. So quarter two will be April 15th through the 17th. Quarter three, we're looking at July 8th through 10th. And last but not least, quarter four, really rounding out the year to demonstrate what we've accomplished and where we're going in 2025 as we talk about being transparent, sharing in the journey, representing the industry, and facilitating the necessary progress. We want quarter four to reflect that. So this is where we'll be able to reflect on the year and sort of also give a nod to where we're going in 2025. So with that, I want to jump ahead. We're a little ahead of schedule here, but open up the floor for any questions that exist amongst those. I see that one has come in, but please submit questions in the Q&A feature. Alternatively, if that question and answer feature is not working in Zoom, if you virtually raise your hand, I believe we have the capability on my end to unmute, and you can ask your question that way as well. So potential two opportunities here for questions, and I will go ahead and wait just a second to see if questions come in, and we can begin answering questions.
And Brian, do you want me to shoot the first question at you so you can reply to this one?
Sure.
Good. So the first one is, when and how can we reach the recorded session if anyone is unable to attend any of the additional sessions we are running this week?
Yes, great question. So I believe this will be made available in a couple different mechanisms. So with future engagement days, what I didn't mention is I highlighted when they're going to be. I didn't give context to sort of what the specific sessions or topics will be. Our monthly newsletter is going to be the mechanism where we will have a specific section dedicated about a month or so out from each of these sessions when they'll occur. So we'll make the registration links and context for each session available. I expect that we will also then make past webinar sessions available in the newsletter in direct engagement as well. So if there's an opportunity that we have a call scheduled with anybody on today's webinar session, we can make sure that we've made those links available. From what I recall, I believe they will be posted directly on either our website or our media channels. I don't know if it's YouTube. Don't quote me on the actual platform. But with that said, we will definitely make sure that we've got these links posted on publicly available sources and sites and sharing those links directly within our newsletters. All right, I see a
Perfect.
couple additional questions. I think this one I can kick to you now, Tamara.
The one from Nazim.
Yes.
Nazim, the renewable energy transition pilot is looking at the opportunities of a facility to become more renewable across different areas. And it looks at a range of different technologies that are broadly assessed. We have done that in China. And one of the key learning was that there are technologies, and I guess that's not coming as a big surprise, that are very easy to implement for a facility, and others will take more time. So we will currently working on reframing this, we call it RATI program, a little bit, so that it really considers the longer implementation time. For the moment, I see it in China. I have no confirmation on other countries, but I'm never saying no, right? So come to us, talk to us if that's a topic you want to learn more, and we are very happy to discuss what opportunities exist. And I assume the next question from Kenneth is also for me, and you're speaking about where could the scaling of naturally colored cotton fit, part of CBD reduction in chemicals. Kenneth, my understanding, just reading the question and not knowing you in person, so I'm not sure where you're coming from, what's your background, is that you are interested in our climate solutions portfolio. With that, there is a full guidance in how to apply to become part of the climate solutions portfolio, and where also the naturally colored cotton would fit in. So I recommend go on our website that I will put in the chat in a minute, and read the guidance on application. There is also a webinar. Is that the one today, Brian, where we share our grant thesis and the areas of funding?
That specific context around the application and the funding and what we fund, what we're looking for, will be the one January 30th and February 8th, depending on those time zones. So it's coming up in a few weeks.
Sorry. So January 30th, guys. That's where we really help you understand where you fit in when you're applying for the climate solutions portfolio, or you're interested in applying for the climate solutions portfolio.
And then tomorrow, maybe just really quick, like 30-second overview of this specific clean by
Yeah,
design chemistry and wastewater management program, like the best practices, what that's kind of focused in. I think that's a little bit related as well to the specific question.
you want to speak about the CBD program itself?
Yeah, just sort of like what the best practices are, how we developed it, and how it kind of relates to facility level
Mhm.
engagement with chemistries.
Absolutely. So our Clean by Design chemistry program is built out on the same methodology as our heritage program, the Clean by Design Energy and Water Efficiency program. These programs are built on 10 best practices that a facility can implement. And we are looking at a range of topics around reducing hazardous chemicals, but we are starting like with build up your chemical inventory, right? So know what you're getting into your facility before we discuss what could be reduced or removed. And it also looks at wastewater management and basically having your wastewater under control and manage it and not let your wastewater manage you. So that's what the CBD chemistry and wastewater management program does. It's a 1 year program and really focused on just 10 best practices that has been highly effective because it's a lot of low hanging fruits for facilities. Still a lot of work because the chemical sphere is very complex. That were maybe 45 seconds. Sorry, Brian.
No worries. I think that's just helpful as well. Um, any other questions I see in the Q&A feature that I think we've covered most of them? If there's any other questions, please submit if you want to raise your hand. We'll give it a couple more minutes. And if nothing else arises, we will go ahead and close out today's session here momentarily. So, and I will wait a couple minutes to see if there's any additional questions. And as a reminder, if you do want to reach out to Tamara or myself, I realize I did not include our email addresses here towards the end, but please reach out to Bryant or
Mm.
Tamara at apparelimpact.org, and we are happy to continue the engagement. So I will wait another couple seconds here to see if any last questions come in. All right, well, I don't see anything that is coming in. So with that, we will proceed to closing out um, today's session. Thank you for everybody who attended. We look forward to your participation in upcoming webinars yet over the next few days, quarters from now, and our continued partnership with each and every one of you who we greatly appreciate, we greatly value, and we thank you for everything that you do, not only for the Apparel Impact Institute, but the industry as a whole in making the progress we need. So enjoy the rest of your days based on where you're at. Some of us are starting, some of us are ending. Thank you, everybody, and we will be in touch soon. Goodbye.
Bye bye, everybody. It's been a pleasure.